joined today by Jen and Lee and Annie and Hannah and Josh. These are the famous five, and you'll come to realise why I keep on calling them that over the course of the interview. It is we're at the start of our series in this podcast, focusing in on the wondrous works that God has been doing in us and through us as a church at Cornerstone Wirral. We've been going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary this year, and you guys were right there, right at the beginning, hence my term, the famous five. You guys were the instigators of this. You were used by God to start something special. So I want to hear your stories. We want to share them with the rest of the church so as they can praise God, glorify Him for what He has done in us and through us over the course of those 10 years. And simply anyone who's listening, anyone who's watching along is invited in to listen to the conversation as we chat and find out a little bit more about what happened all those years ago. So guys, tell me, famous five, how did you guys get together? What happened?
This feels like a Friends 10-year celebration, doesn't it? Like the gang's getting back together. This is James Corden.
We've run out of money. We've run out of cash, so we bring us back together. Then we'll go.
This is actually the plans to plant a new church, guys. So we thought we'd try again and learn from all of our mistakes. Take all of our lessons and start again.
So how did you get together?
So I think we were living in Liverpool, weren't we, at the time? And then we met Josh and Annie. I think we were actually away for when you did the talk about Cornerstone Wirral. And then, but we then, it seems a long time ago. It's very vague. But we met up with you. I remember coming to your house the first time and meeting you for the first time. And we just talked about joining you as part of a church plant on Wirral. We'd only been in Cornerstone Liverpool for not very long. And Lee was quite a new Christian, so it was all quite. I don't think we thought too much about it. Really, we just kind of jumped in and.
So what's one thing I remember was when we talking to people, and Josh and I were there. Saint clocked on that Jen was from the Wirral originally, and suddenly it was quick, she's from the Wirral. Go and speak to her.
Yeah, someone said, have you met Jen? Have you met Jen and Lee? They're from the Wirral. Jen's from the Wirral. Speak to them.
And so you were living in Liverpool at the time?
Yeah.
So
had you been married for a long time at that stage?
No, probably about 2 years. Yeah, about.
Bad question to ask.
Yeah, depends when you talk about. He's probably when we went to Cornerstone Wirral, was probably married about 6 months.
Right.
So you probably, I don't know, sort of 3-6 months into that.
Okay.
So
and what brought you to Cornerstone Liverpool?
So when we first got married, we were sort of in between churches. We were not really. We left our previous church before we got married, which probably wasn't the best decision, but God works in amazing ways. And then through friends, got introduced to Cornerstone Liverpool. And after a little bit of to and fro in, we was deciding whether to not go there, tried other churches. Then in the end, we went to Cornerstone Liverpool, and it was actually during their church weekend away. So when we arrived, my friend who invited us over wasn't there, and there was probably about 10 people there. But it was great. As soon as you walked in, you felt welcomed.
They offered us food.
Alan and Roy welcomed us in. I don't think we made it for food that afternoon, but I think straight away thought, actually, do you know what? The stuff at the front was great. We felt quite at home very, very swiftly.
Yeah. Amazing.
I remember we were on that weekend away. I remember that. And then I remember coming back on the Monday and being like, there was this couple here on Sunday and she's from the Wirral, and I was just like, oh, how did we miss that? And we were like, I hope these guys come back.
No, we never came again.
And Hannah, were you at Cornerstone Liverpool at that stage?
So I had been part of a bigger church in Liverpool and lived in Liverpool, but then had been working away in Guatemala for 2 years, had come back. My house group in the bigger church had sort of disbanded. So I decided and was praying about where should I go? What should I do? And then I knew Steve and Sean and Carrie and Ed and some other people who'd moved to Cornerstone Liverpool. And were like, oh, why don't you come here? And I remember thinking, oh yeah, I'll go and do that. And I left it a few weeks and then turned up and just sort of snuck on the back row. And that week Josh stood at the front and said that he was planning to do a church plant on the Wirral, and I'm originally from the Wirral and had been praying about moving back to the Wirral and close to my family, but I didn't know what church I would be part of if I did. So I was like, yeah, I'll go.
I remember that you just were like, "Hi, I'm Hannah. I'm
I want to go.
I want to go." Like straight away.
Isn't that amazing? Just at that right opportunity. So you guys, you missed out on the weekend away. You missed out on Josh being there week 1, but you came back and that showed something spectacular into like you were wanting to get stuck into the church, and a church particularly that was all about the gospel, wanting to plant more churches, revitalize more churches, and then you found out about Josh and Annie and wanting to go into the Wirral, Jen, where you were from. All these things working together. God is working even in these stories. It's amazing to hear. Josh and Annie, what was your first impressions of these guys?
So I remember Carrie like bounding down the aisle to say, "My friend Anna's from here. She's from the Wirral. You need to talk to her." So that was a vivid memory.
We didn't meet Lee and Jen for a couple of weeks, did we?
Yeah, we kept missing each other. I think
Yeah.
we were weekend away, and then we were away and traveling a bit around then.
Yeah.
So,
And then when you finally did meet,
yeah, we were very quick to, as Jen said, kind of snap her up, them up.
It's very vague.
I just came along for that.
You looked after our guinea pigs.
Yes, did.
Yeah.
They did die later, but not in my care.
Yeah.
Just like
that was early on.
That was
looked-
Annie
you
who
looked
killed
after-
the guinea pigs.
Yeah.
and I looked after your child very early on as well, when you had Evie.
Yeah.
Before I had children.
You did.
impressive.
Childcare and animal care. I was the catch.
That's on your CV, isn't it?
At this
That's why I
stage, am I
came.
right in thinking, so this is what, 2012? So before the Cornerstone Wirral was planted, that's whenever you guys met. Were you both living in the Wirral still?
Yeah.
Always
We've always lived in the
We
Wirral.
moved Wirral 2011, May 2011. Moved into our house August 2011. Moved to Cornerstone, Liverpool. Pretty quick.
January,
After
we
that,
were definitely.
January 2012, yeah.
Yeah.
So I met Steve September 2011. We started studying what's now Crosslands together. We moved January 2012. These guys came when the weekend away was, which was June 2012.
Right.
We were in Keffinley in the chalets and all that. And then, by that stage, we had shared with the church February 2012 that we wanted to plant on Wirral. And then basically, while I was in the sports ministry and building up to that. And then when it came to September 2012, that's when we were really kind of, okay, we're actually going to do this.
Yeah.
And then January 2013, we started
Okay.
Gospel Community in our house in Boundary Road.
So in that time between you sharing with the wider church, the day that Hannah arrived, what you were looking to plant a church in the Wirral, and between everyone seemingly moving back, what was kind of happening?
Everyone.
All three of them. That's a majority of the five. What was going on in those number of months?
So we used to travel over to Hannah's house once a week
Okay.
and have food, lots of lovely food that Hannah cooked for us. And we'd just read and pray and chat things through. And that was great. I think every week we did that, I think. Yeah.
Because we're still part of our gospel communities in Liverpool at the time.
Right, yeah.
I mean, they're great. You
Yeah.
know, really blessed, like sort of those early days in Liverpool, like how much like the guys invested in me and they invested in Jen as well. But yeah, so we're sort of just, we're still with those GCs and then, but also meeting up and praying and reading together, and that's when we're eating great food.
Getting to know one another.
Yeah.
Was this the time? So I've heard a number of stories about kind of, I think you shared, Annie, about in a previous episode of estate agents and
Josh
brochures.
would then
was that around
every
that
week, time? bringing. This is like
Give you a
This
list.
is the first episode, isn't it?
So we would then kind of got to that point where all of us were soaking up a kind of culture and DNA of what we wanted to be as church and growing in that. And as we began to formulate plans more for what we were going to do on Wirral, I guess that autumn 2012 period was when we began to get together a lot more as the five of us, and then to kind of signal the beginning of that first gospel community in January 2013. So over that time, these guys were all pretty much in terms of we're going to move.
Yeah.
And so that would be the
That
time.
was when you were giving me every brochure for Eastern.
Yeah, every brochure.
Yeah, we had the
What,
same.
for Eastern. Do you remember?
You
We
were
had Bromborough, yeah.
Bomber, yeah.
And then
So we had this really kind of radical vision, right? This is how we started this church plant. So I said to Lee and Jen, why don't you guys go and live in Bromborough? Because we're going to plant. We want to keep planting down the I-41. And I was like, why don't you go to Eastham and we'll get there? And we're like, we'll plant it. So we're basically...
We did it. We went to Bromborough.
Buying houses was more difficult in many ways.
Yeah.
And God was kind of working in the midst of that.
Yeah, but then I ended up in Bedmington and now can walk.
Absolutely.
Great,
And it's the best being able to walk straight down to church, whether it was in Port Sunlight in a pub or wherever it has been in the run up to getting to this building. So you then move. You're then all in the Wirral, all 5 of you, and you're praying regularly. You're meeting regularly. You start this first gospel community of, that's what we're going to call it, a gospel community for the Wirral, the 5 of you. What was that like?
Good. We had lots of like fun, like a lot of it. So we did a lot of like going to places where people were, or like we did like walks, didn't we? Around the villages, around the areas.
What were you doing during those times?
Pray. You had a memory of.
I have a memory of walking around Port Sunlight and praying for the local area and sitting on a bench and praying that, you know, God would provide a place to me and people and all of that.
Our church used to fit on a park bench.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
That's unreal, isn't it?
And obviously before here, this is before we started. So there's like no instant structure. There's no, I mean, we all...
Has that changed?
Yeah, well, in places, but there was like no, this is all brand new. No, this is a new area for us. And there's that excitement around that as well. It's like exciting to see what God was doing. There's us still trying to get to know each other as well.
Mm.
So that's great. It's really like sort of blessed time in that as well. So, it's great just walking around.
I just remember praying a lot, like for people all the time, like praying for like non-Christians, praying for neighbours, praying for people to come. I guess it like just please, like people join us, and like, you know, just being so like dependent on God in prayer, I think, in like so many ways. And also that like those conversations with non-Christian friends being like, so what are you? Like, you're not a church. And we were like, well, yeah, like we are. And like, just that was such a great opportunity because they just couldn't get their heads around that. They were like, but you haven't got a building, you know, and they were just like, but why do you meet? I don't understand what's this gospel community group. And that was amazing because it was just, you know, like it really challenged people, but also challenged me to be like, what do I think it is? Like, what is it all about? What's the important stuff? And I think it was like, we just really prayed all the time, didn't we? And it's very outward focused, wasn't it? Very people.
But also like what we wanted it to look like. So like it's formed the like eating, we ate together and then we read a book or we studied a passage or we went for a walk. Like it was all that. And Hannah did an amazing Chinese cookery course. And so we got to try all that out.
Amazing.
It's amazing. Was it a Thursday? And then you used to bring it round for us to eat.
Practice on you.
Yeah, we were willing participants. We did a lot in the Bridge Inn, didn't we? Like we were we did the pub quiz there every week.
Yeah.
That's kind of why we ended up meeting there on a Sunday, because we were trying to be intentional in our presence and our proximity to it and hanging out with people, the locals there.
It was like very intentional, wasn't it? Where you went for coffee, where you like you'd be like, oh, we'll go to the bridge, or it was really location based, wasn't it? Focused like that.
Yeah, it created so many conversations. I mean, I think we at one point flyered the whole of Port Sunlight.
Wow.
I can't remember.
We've done that a couple of times. I did it
just before
a bit
we
later
started,
on. But then we did it at the beginning. We had
Put signs up on posts and all
Posts,
sorts.
we did,
Wow.
About that.
Just billboards filled with Cornerstone, Cornerstone Wirral.
Really
Come and
worked.
join us.
The early actually meeting days as a formal Sunday gathering, half of it was trying to put up the boards in places. That's the setup time. But
it's amazing to hear though that right from the outset, much of what you guys were about was praying, praying for the lost, particularly. Knowing the real darkness and lostness of people in Wirral and the reason why you were planting a church or wanting to start a church, and it was just starting as this seedling gospel community of 5 of you, but you knew you had to pray into that. And I love the fact that really nothing's changed. We still need to be praying for those exact same things and doing more and moving into other areas of the Wirral where there's no gospel presence, And so that encourages me, that in many ways, the rhythm, the kind of, if you cut us open, hopefully people will see the answers to those prayers, those early prayers, and we'll continue to see that as time goes on.
Shows you how much we can overcomplicate church planting in many ways. Like here us five ragtag, there was nothing special about us. We were just compelled by the vision and the need.
Yeah.
And friends and family that like your guys, like your friends and your family lived here, didn't they? And some of them don't know Jesus. And
so as people came in to kind of witness you guys in action, as they came to maybe gospel community, as you invited them into kind of time together where you're just having fun, but displaying Christ, what were some of their experiences?
I remember like our neighbours, like we'd invite them like round things and they'd be like, what are you doing? Like, what are these people just walk in your back door and things like that? So then they started to do it because they saw this like community and like an open home type thing where you can come in and chat and just be known. And that was.
It was just really low key, wasn't it? It was just normal everyday stuff. There was nothing special about it. It was just making the most of everyday life or seasonal events and just kind of being missional and opportunistic with those things.
I remember my sister coming to us when we lived in Banbury, and she saw her name like on the fridge, and she's like, "What's this?" And I was like, "Oh, we were just we're praying for you." And she's like, "Why?" But it was that all the time, But they were so aware that we were. It's like you still got these like notes and things that I've still got, and you gave us like a 5-year prayer diary. I don't know if you remember, like to write down prayers that we had, and like still got it, and like just seeing now when we look back, although how amazing God was and is and carries on to be, seeing all those people that we've prayed for either got to know us more or have come along on a Sunday or have become Christians or, it's been amazing to see those answers to prayer and just see how God's worked.
Amazing. God is so good, isn't he? Seeing that fledgling kind of low key, everyday kind of stuff, kind of grow and begin to flourish and form into something that we have today. And it's not something that we hold on to. It's not something that we've organized and created. It's something that he's been building and shaping. And he started with calling you guys to come into the battlefield, to step in, to be a light in the midst of darkness. And was that hard to do? Was that relatively easy? Like, share with us, what was it like planting that gospel community into what became a church?
I guess it was a bit strange. In his early conversations we had with people, either people who go to other churches or thought about coming, it's like, you want me to move? You want me to be part of this area? Like if if you want, if you're committed to this area, that might mean moving. It might not, what does that look like? The people are like, oh, okay, that's a bit different. You eat together. Why do you do that? It goes on longer than an hour. Why is it going on longer than an hour?
I remember explaining church plant
a
lot, because we sort of got used to just saying those words, but obviously that's not a phrase that anybody knows.
Absolutely.
So you'd say it and then they'd be like, a what? A church plant? Like,
what was your best definition?
Just explaining that there was a church in Liverpool, so it's a group of people who meet there, and then we wanted to start a church on the Wirral, so that's why it's been planted from another church, and then we'll hope to see it grow. But I remember explaining that a lot. Like someone in work saying, Hannah's started a church.
But it
not just me.
It was Christians as well, wasn't it? And churches around, they were just the whole thing was so foreign. And I used to attend the World Gospel Partnership meetings every month. Used to meet those leaders quite regularly and frequently. Like even to them, it was like the concept was just like, we don't need this, or like it's not, or go somewhere else and do it. That was kind of rhetoric, but I was just kind of, I think Tim Keller always said that like the planting of churches is great for existing churches because it reawakens all churches to reconsider what church is, like continually defining it and redefining it. And actually, the story proves is that I think we all began to realize that there's not enough churches.
Yeah.
And so we always need more churches planted and more churches revitalized. And actually this was part of it. So even it wasn't just non-Christians who were like, you guys are nuts. Like, what are you doing? Or the owner of the Bridge Inn, who was a white witch, and she was just like, oh yeah, sure. It's all spirituality. It's great. Come on ahead, use the room, or while it was other churches and Christians. Eventually we all got to the point where like, no, this is good. This is right.
Yeah.
We've got to see this. And like the kind of 10 years in, like we've not oversaturated this area, have we, of the gospel? The need's still huge. So we got to keep going.
Yeah. I imagine that another term that you would have had to define every single time you mentioned it was gospel community. Yeah. Because people, as you've shared, people step into that and go, here, wait a minute, why is that so much fun? Why is there so much life in there? Why are they spending more than an hour together?
Why are you eating together? Why is that person cooking for you in your house?
A lot of whys. How would you encourage this idea of what gospel community is all about from what you've experienced for the past 10 years? What would be your kind of like, this is why gospel community is so crucial to the vibrancy, to the mission, to the prayers of the church?
I think a lot of it was trying to explain it's not just a Bible study. It's not like we meet on a Wednesday and also on a Sunday. That's like just huge. That's like a huge almost barrier to get past with us as well, isn't it? With most people, that's our natural thing, or maybe what we've been brought up with. And I think that's the Wirral as well, like what a lot of us have experienced. So I think that was huge just to kind of get past that. But that's exciting as well, isn't it? Because it's like we are doing something different. We were in each other's houses every day, weren't we? Just nothing, like when Josh was saying before, it was very relaxed. There's nothing formal. There's nothing organised even. It'd just be like, oh, you're free tonight? We're going for a walk, or do you want to pop in? Like it was just very, I guess we could do that because we were small, but I was just thinking as when we were talking before about the way we gathered, like, I don't know if I've just never thought of it before, but none of us came with like, so obviously Josh and Annie were the leaders, but like you could play the flute, couldn't you? But I never thought like, well, I'm not a worship leader, Lisa. Who's going to be that? Like, there's no thinking of that even. So I guess probably Josh was thinking that. About that. That was all on him. But I don't ever remember thinking that, like, and thinking, well, who will do what? It was, and like kids' church, remember you were like just week to week, we'd like make it up. I remember making a file of like crafts and it was just all very organic and very like thought on the spot, and we tried things, some didn't work, like we just different things that we'd have a go, and if it didn't, that was fine, and we'd do something else. But it was just very like, we just had a go, didn't we? And we didn't come as like this ready prepared team. None of us were like, oh, I've got this gifting. Like Lee was such a new Christian, I don't think you didn't know like what your gifting was, and I wouldn't have known. Like we just, I don't know, it's just a real innocence about it, like just like I don't know, we just really didn't think that much in that way. Josh,
just loving the area and loving the people.
Yeah.
The people that God's placed around us in the area we've been put in, and like really investing in that, and just wanting to display Christ in whatever we were doing, and just praying for each other, because we all had work as well, like we were doing, secular jobs.
And like Josh said before, it's not complex, like in terms of like just having a home group study where you come in, you stay for an hour, then you go, I'll see you on Sunday, or I'll see you next Wednesday, or whenever. Actually, the Bible doesn't call us to do that. Like if you look at in Acts, they're living in each other's houses, they're sharing positions. Actually, how that's so countercultural now. It's actually, how can we show that? And actually, that's what we still say now. How do we show that? So we weren't there to say, oh, we got a brand new initiative and come and join because we're doing something brand new. Actually, what we're doing is 2,000 odd years old, more than that.
Yeah.
And it's just actually, how do we replicate that in our context now? But how do we show that?
Yeah.
And so I mean, that was a really fun time. It was very different for us as well. Like coming into that environment, but
I think as well for me, it's like being in contact with people through the week. So in previous churches, like Lee said, you just see people, I don't know, like Sunday and Tuesday or whatever. And also I always used to find, because I was single, like during the summer holidays, like everything would just stop.
Yeah.
And there'd be like no contact with anybody. And I always really struggled with that, because I was just working like normally, because I wouldn't take holidays because I didn't have children at that time. So I was just like, nothing was different for me, but then I just wouldn't see anyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's been really good, like that we just stay in contact with people, even if it's just through WhatsApp, or if, someone's not well, or, checking up on them, they need food, or someone's had a baby or whatever. Like, it's not just, oh, I'll see you next week.
It's the everyday moments.
Yeah.
It's all of life. It's intense, but it's beautifully intense. It's loving for one another. It's caring for one another, and it's outward focused. as well. So all of this isn't just like so as we can be all insular and kind of lovey-dovey amongst ourselves, but actually it's seeking to grow and equip one another, pray big prayers for those who don't yet know Jesus, and keep on inviting them to come and see for themselves, whether that's seeing what this community looks like and why it's like this, because they can't replicate it like your neighbors tried to do. And they can't replicate it in the same way because there's something vitally missing, and that's Christ Jesus. What were some of your prayers back then, and how have they been answered over the course of the years? And what are some of your prayers now for us as a church?
One thing, we were obviously praying for people to join the team because we knew we were a small number and had to do more. So like there was stuff like I was getting a random phone call from one guy who was finishing university and was like, getting a job not far away. I've heard you guys starting a church plant. I'm interested. So all of a sudden there's somebody coming to join us, and then a few other people locally were starting to hear of it and they were interested. And so I spent a lot of time in coffee shops with people, kind of test and discern if they would be right to join a church plant, and trying to fight off the temptation of like, well, you're breathing, so we'll take it. We need anyone. So there was a lot of that from my end in terms of what I was working on, as well as trying to like raise money externally or trying to plan. So my head was kind of filled with a lot of that, and just kind of thinking, like as Jen was saying, maybe thinking longer term about stuff and how we're actually going to do this. Is this actually going to work? Is this viable?
Yeah.
Josh was thinking about it while you were
The rest of you guys were all having fun. Josh was just like deep in like,
So a lot that was going on as well.
Yeah.
I really remember playing for Jono and Ollie.
Yeah.
And then
them coming round for Pancake Day, that was then, wasn't it? Was that after that?
That was February 2014.
Oh, okay. We're a year on, sorry.
oh, I was ages.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we were praying
Right from
they
Hannah's
came
house.
social stuff, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John and Katie as well.
Yeah.
Yes, we're praying for like
Nice.
individuals who we've seen. We look back at like amazing how God's worked in their lives, and we're praying for areas, and we were praying for the A41, like that was then like that we'd see gospel communities in all those areas and beyond, and we're now seeing it in all areas of the Wirral. Which is amazing. And I guess like the prayers, like we were so now like we want to just pray for those areas and saturate the areas where we're living, because that is where God's placed us, the same as what we were 10 years ago. He's placed us there to speak to our neighbours, to chat to the mums at the gate. Even though our lives are changed and look different now with what goes on, it's still the same thing.
I remember we did The World We All Want. Beth came to that, and Claire came to that, the nursery manager where Evie was.
That was
just
after,
a little bit after, yeah. Like remember, like we were just who like people we had began to get to know, and like inviting them all
like
into it. And
riskier.
Yeah.
You kind of just jumped in.
Yeah, it was.
And everyone.
And we really intentional with everything. So like Jen was saying about the shops, like we actually, or the coffee shop, we went to the same coffee shop.
Yeah.
Not that we were all there together, but that we got to know the people in that area and the people who came into that coffee shop, because people do that. And that is that, wasn't it? But also like pray, like it's like a family amongst ourselves, because like when we moved, we didn't know anyone on the Wirral. So having people then move over who had the same vision, who loved Jesus, loved the church, but loved us as well. And that's like sustained us as well, like all these people around us who just look out for us as a couple, as as a team, like, and just seeing that, because we, and
that's something like our friends and family see now, isn't it? And like did then, but also still now that everything, like if we invite them to things, they'll always say our church families are, or like they know each other, don't they? There's such strong links there that if you've got that all set up here, like it's just all mixed in, isn't it?
But it's been 10 years of that, isn't it? Like just hanging out with each other's families, and then it'll be your dad helping us with the car stuff, or hanging out with Beth and Fraser recently, just in the park down the road, and it's just like
it gets like those practical things, like we didn't know what garage to go to, like stuff like that. We're like we don't know, but then we suddenly introduced to this wider family, and we were welcomed in, like, and looked after and cared for.
Church plants bring different meaning to church's family. So in established churches, you can lose that essence. And particularly if you're from this area, you just, church is an addition to my nuclear family. And actually, church planting does something different. That it brings a different understanding and experience that church is family.
Yeah.
And I think that's what becomes very compelling to people watching.
Well, Jesus says, doesn't he, this is how you will know that you're my disciples, by how you love one another, living as family, working as family.
And it's not extraordinary
time.
acts.
Yeah,
It was just
family.
normal everyday stuff. Like Jen used to look after Evie for us, you know,
Before I had children.
a day a week. And it was just like who does that?
Yeah.
You know, well, church does that.
We used to go to Asda a lot. We used to sit in the trolley and be like, let's go to Asda.
There's a tip
I had a lot of
for most
time.
young parents.
But also with that as well is when you're a small team, you're there to get your hands dirty as well. Like actually, you know, if you don't do it, no one's going to do it. You know, that could be with food. You know, it could be having people over. It could be inviting your friends and family. So like the prayer now, really, one of them is actually we are an established church. You know, and this, you know, prayers, we don't get complacent and we don't just go, okay, we're comfortable. And that's why we're talking about church planting again, because we don't want to be comfortable. We don't want, you know, praise God if we have 150 people in our gatherings. But if there's no room for anyone else, you know, same with our front rooms, there's 25 people in our front rooms for our GCs. Yeah, it's fine, very nice to keep you warm in the winter. But you know, that, you know, takes away opportunity for other people to come in there as well.
Yeah.
And could be a hindrance. So actually, yeah, it's healthy to go out and everyone's sort of seeing their role in the midst of that as well.
Yeah. So to have that missional mentality in all that you've been doing right from the outset, that's what it's been about. And that has to permeate through and carry on through to every gospel community that's multiplied. And those gospel communities are multiplied into places where there's currently no gospel witness, where there's need, because there's the lost are there. Guys, I want to pray for you guys. I want to lift you guys up and what God's been doing in you, and then we'll bring this conversation to a close. There's so many more conversations to be had. I am loving this series, getting to hear all these stories. You guys are so funny as I hear the stories as well. But let me just pray for you guys and praise God for what He's been doing. Father, thank you so much that you called these 5 people, Jen and Lee and Annie and Josh and Hannah, to leave behind all the things of their previous lives in Norwich and Liverpool and wherever it might be, and come to the world, to this place, to step into the unknown and by faith, to live for you, to seek to further your kingdom, to seek to make you known in the midst of this place that we call home. Father God, I thank you that you have blessed and answered their prayers as they sat on those park benches in Port Sunlight. I thank you that you have blessed and answered their prayers as they invited people to come and see Jesus for the first time. Thank you for the prayers that have been answered, that we now have people in Cornerstone Wirral who are an answer to those prayers. Lord, we praise you for their faith in you and their desire to make you known over these 10 years and beyond. And Lord, we pray for more. We pray for more gospel communities like this, low-key, everyday moments, living a life as family together on mission for the glory of God and for the furthering of His kingdom. We praise you, Lord, for all that you're doing, for your wondrous works in the midst of what we're doing as a church. We praise you. Amen. Well, that's us for this episode of His Wondrous Works. It's so good that you've been able to join us for this. Do catch us next time as we share the next stage of what it looks like to multiply as gospel communities as well. And we're going to be dropping episodes every single week in the run up to that big birthday bash, celebrating those 10 years together and celebrating all that God has been doing in us and through us as a church. So do stick around. If you've liked this episode, why don't you share it with some people who maybe don't know about it yet? Why don't you like it on whatever app you're using? Why don't you tell your friends to come and have a listen as well? We would love to hear stories that you have of your time at Cornerstone and what God's been doing in and through you as well. So do share those with us. But until next time, God bless. See you soon.